Hey guys, Frost and Ives here with another book review, and this time we are going to be reviewing the new Dark Tower book by Stephen King entitled The Wind Through the Keyhole. I have it here in hardcover and paperback. Now this is the 8th book in the Dark Tower series. This is the newest book in the Dark Tower series. It was written not that long ago. And technically, it is the 4th and a half book in the Dark Tower series. This book takes place in between Wizard and Glass and Wolves of the Calla. So this is technically the Dark Tower 4.5. And the hardcover clocks in at 307 pages. And the paperback is about the same length. 307 pages. And to answer your first question, as many people will ask, since it is a new Dark Tower book, do I have to read this? Well, while it is the answer to that is no. While it is a very good book and a decent story, there is no new tower information relegated in this book. So therefore, this book is completely skippable and missable. And if you don't read it, and you just read the 7, you're not missing out on a whole lot, except an interesting story that Roland tells his quartet. Now, this book follows the same narrative structure as the last book, as the Dark Tower 4, in that this is another story about Roland telling a story of his past to his quartet. Except in this book, Roland is telling a story of him telling a story. And I will get into that. This is actually 3 stories nestled in one. So, it's very simple. After Wizard and Glass, the quartet are on the path of the beam again. They come across a river, the River Wye. And the ferryman takes them across the river on his boat. And as they're crossing the river, Roland realizes that, and the ferryman realizes that a stark blast is coming. Now, in Roland's world, a stark blast is a giant storm. Think of a hurricane, but one that instantly freezes everything in its path. So, high winds, destructive winds, just awful temperatures, minus 100 degrees. It will instantly kill anything and destroy everything. That's kind of what a stark blast is. So the ferryman tells them, go over to the yonder town, and there's a place you can hold up for the night. So they go to the town, this crumbling ruins of a town, and they take shelter in an old abandoned brick building. Might have been a church, I'm not sure. And they wait the stark blast out. And Eddie, like any Boy Scout would, Eddie says, why don't you tell us a story? Asks Roland to tell them a story to pass the time. So he does. So he tells a story of, once again, of when he was young. He tells the story of him and Jamie DeCurry. And after Magius, Roland's father sends the 2 of them on a trip to a small town called Debaria, and tells them that they have to find and apprehend what they call a skin man, which is basically a shapeshifter. I thought it was a werewolf, but it's not. The creature can take all kinds of shapes. So they have to go to this town, and they have to hunt down and capture this skin man, and kill him, more likely. So they take a train, and the train breaks down, and they have to go the rest of the way on foot, and they get there, and along the way, they pass a little town called, a little place called Serenity, which is like a all-women retreat. And they ask about the Skin Man, and the woman that runs the place says, yes, we've heard of it, it's in that town. And the woman knows Roland's mother, and she says, when you're done in Debaria, come back here, and I have something for you. So they get to Debaria, and they start talking to people, and they start investigating, and there's dozens and dozens of people that have been killed. And they find a survivor. He's a young boy named Bill Streeter. And Roland talks to the boy and hypnotizes him to find out what the boy knows. And the boy didn't see the Skin Man, but he knows he has a blue tattoo on his ankle, which is broken by a scar. So he didn't see the man, but he saw the man's feet, and he knows that there's a blue tattoo on his ankle. So Roland and Jamie surmise that the Skin Man is actually one of the salt mine workers. There's a salt mine, and one of the workers there must be the Skin Man. So Roland tells Jamie, go out and bring back everybody in that salt mine that can ride a horse. Kind of weird. So he goes and he does that. And while Roland is waiting for Jamie to come back with all the workers, Roland tells Bill a story in order to keep him calm. And he tells the story, which is actually called The Wind Through the Keyhole. The story is about a young man named Tim, whose father dies, and his father's best friend marries his mother, and his father's best friend turns out to be a drunk, abusive person, and winds up beating his mother so bad that she goes blind. And one day, the tax collector comes to his town to collect the taxes, and the tax collector is actually Flag. They call him the Covenant Man, but he's Flag. And he basically gives Tim a key to open up his stepfather's chest, this little chest that he has. And he finds out that his stepfather is the one that killed his father. And then Tim goes and talks to Flag and says, you know, can you help me? And Flag sends him on this quest through this forest, this enchanted forest, thinking that it'll actually kill the kid. And the kid sets off, and he goes through the forest, and he overcomes some obstacles, and he finds a tiger locked up in a cage. And he frees the tiger, and you find out that the tiger is actually Merlin, who has been changed and imprisoned in the form of a tiger. So the kid sets Merlin free, and in return, Merlin gives him some magic to go and cure his mother. So he goes back, cures his mother of his blindness, and his stepfather comes back in and tries to kill the little boy, and his mother kills his stepfather with an axe. And then Tim goes on and becomes a gunslinger. And that's how that story ends. So then finally, now we're back to the Skin Man story. Jamie comes back with all of the people, and eventually the little boy picks the Skin Man out of a lineup, and Roland says, come with me. And the Skin Man freaks out and changes shape. And once again, Roland has to gun him down. So they get the Skin Man and they kill him. And now everything's right with the world. So Jamie and Roland go back to Gilead. And along the way, they stop in Serenity. And the lady gives the gift to Roland, which is actually a letter from his mother that she had written before her death. And the gist of the letter basically says to Roland, I forgive you. She already knew she was going to be killed, going back to Gilead. And she already knew that Roland was going to be the one to kill her. So she wrote him a letter saying, I forgive you. So then Roland finishes that story. Now we're back with Eddie and the quartet. And finally the Stark Blast is over. And they can pack up their gear. And they're back on the road, back on the path of the beam. And they're heading to Caliber and Sturgis. And we're heading to the next book, Wolves of the Calla. And that's the gist of the story. It's a good story. It's an interesting read. It's a quick read. But it is in no way, shape, or form necessary to understand the rest of the Tower books. It's some interesting plot points in it. We learn a little bit more about Jamie DeCurry, one of Roland's original quartet members. And we learn a little bit more about Roland as a young boy. And we get to hear a story that he was told as a child. And we get to see Flag in another form as the Covenant Man. And, you know, what kind of shenanigans he's doing. But overall, It's a completely missable book. And, you know, when you're talking about something that's The Dark Tower and you say it's missable, that you can skip it, might not be the best thing in the world. Also, and it's kind of disheartening because we just came off a book where Roland tells a story to his quartet. We just finished that book in Wizard and Glass. And now we have another book where they use the same structure, where Roland is once again telling a story to his quartet again. And it just feels rehashed. It feels like a smaller version of Wizard and Glass. It feels like a rehash of the narrative structure that we just had. Whereas with Wizard and Glass, it was done really well, and we got to see some really cool things. In this one, this was sort of like a campfire story where, you know, a bunch of Boy Scouts are sitting around the fire, and the Scoutmaster tells a story. And inevitably, at the end of the story, it was good, but in about a week or two, you're really not going to remember the story. And that's kind of how The Wind Through the Keyhole feels. It's a good read, but in 3 or 4 weeks, you're really not going to remember what happened in this book. And that's kind of unfortunate. It's not really a bash on the book. It just, I don't know, it just kind of feels, in a way, unnecessary. That maybe we could have gotten a different story about Roland's past instead of one where he's basically going to kill a shapeshifter. So that's my review. I'm going to give this out of 5 stars. I'm going to give this, I'm going to cut it down the middle. I'm going to go to 2.5, right down the middle, because it is a Dark Tower story, and it is about Roland, and it's always nice to get into Roland's world, but it is missable. It is skippable. And to me, that's the worst thing that you could say about a book, is that you could skip it and not really miss a whole lot. So 2.5 out of 5 stars. Read it if you're a diehard fan or you just want a quick read. That's my review of Wind Through the Keyhole. The next book to be reviewed after I read it will be The Dark Tower 5, Wolves of the Calla. Really looking forward to reading that one again. And as always, enjoy the video, comment, subscribe, like the video, share it, keep reading, and I will see you on the next review.